Hi, this is Ross Waddell, developer of the Wonderfest Contest Entry Management System, and welcome to part 2 of these series of 6 video tutorials. In part 2, we're going to talk about how to initialize a new contest year, which consists of setting up year-specific records for the medals, the model categories, and the sponsored awards. Now, truth be told, the first two don't generally change from year to year, although I suppose a new category could be added at some point, but it's typically the sponsored awards that vary dramatically from one contest year to another. Hence the reason for creating year-specific records of those so that there's no confusion between one year or the next. It's probably easier just to show you what I mean when I get into the application. So I'm just going to launch the application here. I'm going to log in as Drew, who's an administrator. So when you first log in, this is the macro security warning for Access 2003. You're going to see this every single time you log into the application. It's just part of Microsoft's security measures, but you just click open and away you go. Here's the splash screen, which just shows you as the application starts. And here's what I was referring to. So as an administrator, when Drew first logs in after January 1st, if that current calendar year, in this case 2010, has not been initialized, you get prompted to set it up every time you log into the application until you actually set it up. So in this case, you can click yes, and then you could do what you need to do, which is fairly straightforward. For now, I'm just going to click no and show you what that means when you do it later on. So if you look at the search screen on the left here, you'll see in the drop down for the contest year that only one year shows up. So this drop down and all the drop downs related to years only show years that have been initialized. In this case, the prior year, 2009, since I've included records for the year 2009. So just to show you what I mean, I click search and you can see all the records. And in fact, the first one even has a model photo because they won Best Junior at last year's show. So to initialize, before you can create any new records for the current contest year, again in this case 2010, you need to initialize that. So if you go up to the Tools menu, you'll see that the first item on the Tools menu is Initialize Contest Year. It prompts you for what year you want to set up, and ignore the example which says 2009. In this case, it defaults to the current calendar year 2010. So all you have to do is say OK, and here you go. So what this does is it takes all the records from the previous contest year, if one exists, and copies them for the next year, in this case 2010. If there hadn't been a prior year, if I hadn't added records for 2009, then there's a series of defaults I've created and we just copy those. In this case, it did create copies of the prior year, and you can tell that by looking at the medals. So if you recall, in 2009, the only records we showed during the ceremony were the gold medal records. Those are the only ones we took photos for. So hence, where it says announced in ceremony, you can see only the gold is selected. Generally though, and you'd want to have the bronze and the silver and the gold announced in the ceremony. Now, before you say, well, hang on, for bronze we just read them all out at once, that's why there's this column called the winners grouped together in ceremony. So what this means is you only get one slide that says bronze medal for that particular category, so sci-fi or superhero. So while that slide is up, you read all the bronzes. It doesn't show a separate slide for each record. It just shows you one blank slide, by the way, so you can read out the winners. But for silver, since that field is not checked, it means that it will show the model for each silver that's won for that category, because they're not grouped together. And same for the gold. So this is typically on a year-to-year basis. If you were to take photos of the models either as they enter the contest or afterwards when you decided who's won the awards, normally you do it this way. You do the bronze, the silver, and the gold. So I'm going to leave them like that just so you know. On the categories tab, you can see this is a list of categories. Again, this hasn't really changed much over the last few years, at least not the few years that I've been going. And there's two columns here that are of interest. One is the award order. So this is the order in which the categories are read out during the awards ceremony on Sunday. So we start with the junior division, we go through the team. The last one is the big kahuna, the sci-fi, fantasy, and horror. Strangely, for reasons I haven't quite figured out, on the website it's the exact opposite order. So I provided 2 columns here that, again, generally you don't need to touch these. You don't need to worry about them. Only if you add a new category, for example, would you change these. These just get copied from year to year, so you don't need to worry about it too much. But this is how you control the order that it's shown on the website and the order that you read it out during the award ceremony. Now over here on the sponsored awards, again, these are copied from 2009, so you'll see things like the Kami's Choice. You may not have that again this year. It may be that there's a different one. So you could always select this record and delete it, and you just press the delete key. Actually, you need to select the whole record, and then you click delete, and it's gone. And it'll ask you if you want to confirm deletion of records, and you just say yes. So there, it's gone. Now you'll notice that the order in ceremony is not continuous. It goes 1, 2, and jumps to 4. So you need to renumber this. So let me start with what the columns are. The name of the sponsored award, that's obvious. The sponsor, that's obvious too. Whomever you want to call as being the sponsor. I think for Best Teen and Best Junior, generally the sponsor is Wonderfest. So you might want to type in Wonderfest here. And then the order and ceremony column controls the order in which you read these out during the ceremony. Now again, if you use this application for everything in 2010, then this order and ceremony will control both the list that's printed out for Dave to read during the ceremony itself, and then it syncs up the order for the PowerPoint presentation slide deck. So if you use this for everything, then there's no way to get out of sync because both are generated based on these values. So what you'd probably want to do at some point, probably before you even start entering the model records, but certainly at least before you start assigning who's won these, is you'd want to go in here and administer them. So you can do whatever you want to do now, or you could just leave it, and then you can always come back later and edit these. So that I should make that clear too. Whatever you do now, you don't have to do anything if you don't want to. You just initialize the contest year. You can always come back and edit these later on. So I'll show you that. So let's say we're completely done, and I click exit. Now you'll notice that if I go over to the contest year, I see 2 entries because I've initialized it. I can use it, and also I can create a new model record for the 2010 year. If I've entered all the records in and I'm ready to assign who's won the sponsored awards, but I know the sponsored awards list has changed, you can just go to the Edit Administration Tables and let's say Sponsored Awards, and it goes right to that tab, and it defaults to the current contest year, but you can edit whatever year you want, but this is probably what you'd want to do. And then you can change whatever you want here. You can either retype over some, you can delete some, you can add them, and then you can reorder them by using a continuous number for the order and ceremony. So let's just jump back to our slide deck. So that's it for part 2. In part 3, we'll get into the user accounts and security. That would be a brief one as well, because there may be things that you don't even need to do for user accounts if you just use the 3 user accounts I provided out of the box. You don't wish to do anything. It could be a short tutorial. Maybe you don't need to pay much attention. Thank you for joining, and see you in part 3.